Hello there, and welcome to another of Andre's Artist Profiles. And today, I'm profiling the career of Mr. Bruce Springsteen. And he's celebrating a birthday today. Now, when this guy first came out, I learned this from my father. He was actually, if I understand it, on the cover of Time magazine before he even dropped his first album. I mean, this guy was hyped as the new Bob Dylan. But somehow, from his Asbury Park, New Jersey roots, he lived up to a vision that was nothing to do with Bob Dylan's, but everything to do with just, being Bruce Springsteen. And I started getting into him around 2004, about, a decade ago. And I've amassed a good selection of his CDs. Now, among what you're going to see here are all of his classics, but there are some gaps, but I've got all the important stuff, so let's get on with this artist profile here. This is his debut album, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. Now, in the early 2000s, these albums were actually reissued and remastered. They weren't fancy or anything, but, anyway, this is a really great album. There's Bruce on the bottom, like a postage stamp in his beard days. Kind of the way he appeared on that painting on Time. Now, Manfred Mann's Earth Band had a hit with Blinded by the Light. But this is a really good album. Kind of the beginning, I would say, of, somewhat of the Heartland, rock sound. A different side of the singer-songwriter kind of outlook. More rhythmic. More influenced by soul and Phil Spector and that sort of thing. It's evident here. He's close to his sound, but not 100% there. But now this album, actually released the same year, The Wild, The Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle, is where Bruce really came into his own. He's got Clarence Clemens by this time, Danny Federici, the fantastic David Sancious keyboard player is on this album. And, obviously the E Street Shuffle is on here. These records had great individual songs, but these were definitely albums. But they weren't progressive rock kind of AOR. They were singer-songwriter AOR. Bruce Springsteen was unique that way. His approach to music was quite a bit different than, other rock stars out there. And I always admired him for it. Little kind of, funky things. A lot of kind of jazz influences on this album. Bruce surprised you. Really good record, and I highly recommend it for those interested in Bruce's more, I would say, creative and artistic side rather than his commercial peak, which came with this. Now, this album was released in 1975. Any fan of what you call classic rock, of course, knows this album very well. It's been covered by a lot of different people alone. And, Born to Run was a really, really huge, successful song for him and really typified his sound. And let me open it up. There's, of course, the late Clarence Clemens there. Thunder Road, Jungle Land. This just has some of Bruce's, best songs on it. I think it'll be a long time before we figure out just how great this album is. And it really broke him out. He established some characters on the songs that he always wrote with, and he always wrote character plays on them. And we get to see the characters in their various situations. Here they're born to run, basically. But on this album, this is where things started to change. He did an album called Adam Raised a Cain. Now, this album is where he emerges sort of the working class hero. Same set of characters as on Born to Run, but, they're stuck in kind of working class positions in life now. And this album really explores that. This is very much a rejection of, stardom and the embrace of something very different. Like on Badlands, Factory, This is just, it's a little more harrowing, but somehow Bruce makes it all seem positive and elegant, even somehow. I mean, Bruce is amazing like that. There's another picture of him in there, look on the back. All right, this album came out the year I was born, actually, and it's a double album, but I put it in a single case because those double album cases get on my nerves. he had a pretty big hit with this called Hungry Heart. You know, Hungry Heart is very much the Springsteen sound, but it's a great album. A lot of information on a double album, but it's one of the E Street Band's best in a lot of ways. I mean, I could go on talking about all these albums forever, but, you know, you don't want to ramble on about something when you're doing an artist profile, right? Then in 1982 came Nebraska. It's a pretty desolate cover and a pretty desolate album. Now, this is pretty naked and stripped down stuff. And Nebraska could be a very stripped down and desolate place. And this album reflects that. You know, it's a critic's favorite, but I don't think it was all that commercially popular. Which was saved by, of course, the Bruce Springsteen album I think everybody knows. If you were born in the 80s, this was part of your collective consciousness. With Thriller, Like a Virgin, all that stuff. But this was the rocker side of it. Born in the U.S.A. And this was like his Thriller hit parade sort of album. You know, of course it's got, you know, I'm on Fire, Dancing in the Dark, you know, all the big songs that he had, and he was a big MTV presence at this point, and this was definitely where he was establishing himself in a working class position. But, you know, Bruce Springsteen rejected stardom a little bit for this album, Tunnel of Love, 1987. This album is slick and stripped down compared to Born in the USA, and the E Street Band aren't with him, and he's reflecting on marriage, the end of his, of course, and a number of different factors. I mean, he's looking at life a little more from an adult point of view here, an individualistic character sketch. And, you know, I did pretty well, actually, from what I understand, but not the success of Born in the USA, obviously. Now, we flash forward to 92. He didn't really release a lot of records in between that. I think there was some live things and stuff like that. But these two albums that you see here, okay, spread them out a little bit. Lucky Town and Human Touch came out same year, same day. The difference is that this album was a little warmer. This album was a little more like Darkness in the Edge of Town. Similar sound, but, you know, he was changing up a little bit. So, okay, this album, The Rising, was actually my introduction to Bruce Springsteen in 2001. I got this, or 2002. This was his post 9/11 album. You know, his reflection on the American psyche and stuff like that. And it's a dark album, but there's also a lot of lightness to it, too. There's a very spiritual sense about it, you know. Not to overuse that buzzword, spiritual, because it's not really a buzzword, but it comes off that way. Anyway, here is his 2009 album, Working in a Dream. You know, I really love this album. You know, it's really good, kind of nimble writing. I think, you know, Bruce Springsteen's released a lot of albums, more on critical acclaim than anything. The Boss, as it were, is a legacy performer now. You know, he's not going to have huge hits, but anyway. This is his most recent album from last year called Wrecking Ball. This album returns to that big walloping drum sound that he was used to having. Let me open this up here. It's got Bruce's guitar and an amp inside it. There's Bruce on the back of it, looking very much like Springsteen. So yeah, anyway, those are my collection of Bruce Springsteen's albums that I have. And I know there's some missing, like The Ghost of Tom Joad and a couple of his more recent things, but it doesn't matter to me because I think I have the important stuff by this very important artist. So, in that spirit, happy birthday, Bruce.